Good morning, YouTube. So, I today am going to take it from the top. Try to. I hate the lighting. I'm going to try to explain to you guys what reality is, what it is that you live in, what this world is, what your history is, and what's going on in the world. Yeah, let's have some light. So, way back in the Bible, we had Adam and Eve. Good place to start. In the beginning. So Adam and Eve, God creates everything. He created the whole world. And see, first, right at the beginning, he says, he marries wisdom. So wisdom, all you ladies who say, there's no women in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. First off, every human soul is feminine. All of them in the heavenly. And wisdom is the first female in the Bible. And she marries God and gives him the knowledge, and then he shows her creation with his hands and with her, however he does it. But wisdom is definitely a woman. And we're all told to seek her. Anyway, so God marries wisdom. And then the first thing he creates is he says, let there be light. And then that ambient light, or whatever it is, that's his form. That's not the sun. He creates the sun later. He creates the moon and the stars and all that stuff later. When he says, let there be light, that's him. And that's love and goodness and all of the things representative of light. The opposite of sin, the opposite of dark. So the sun isn't that light. And then when God is described by the people who've seen him, he's described as fire. It's light. So anyway, moving on from there, he creates all of the creations, creates the angels, all that stuff. And then at the end, he makes Adam. But Adam was huge. And I don't mean 12 feet tall. He was huge, and he was of a higher form. When he eats the apple and gets wisdom, and then is thrown out of grace, it's said that his form changes a bit. Now that could just be his perception of it is changed because of the wisdom or whatever. Anyway. Excuse me. God knew that was going to happen. He created Satan knowing and putting that pride in him. Pride is what made Satan fall from grace. But God gave him that pride for a reason. Later, in the scriptures when God and Satan are talking. Um, God is going to destroy all of the Nephilim children, all their spirits and all their soul. He's going to totally destroy them. And Satan pleads with him and says, through Enoch, and he says, um, I won't be able to to complete the work that you need me to do without them. And God says, okay, you're right. But evil spirits, they were made, and evil spirits on earth were made, and so they will remain on earth. And he traps them in this realm, and they'll remain spirit. So they're not going to get a physical form again. And then he does, and then he kills them all. They get form by possession, uh, and who knows? There's all kinds of evidence that there's still Nephilim around, giants. So, and there's writings about it and stuff. I don't know enough to really talk about. Anyhow, but they were definitely around back then. I know enough about that. And so moving forward, now, as all that was going on, well, they fall from grace and then they have kids, as you may or may not know. Those kids uh, have jealousy and things bred into them. The animal side of us, right? It's why we think animals have souls, is because we don't understand the difference between our animal side and our soul. So we think that we see soul in our pets, and it's actually we're seeing the animal side of us and just emotion, which is all part of the animal thing as well. But those sons, one kills the other, and he Cain. Oh, before Cain, actually, sorry. When Adam was first created, he was created, and then Lilith was created. And Lilith was created out of mud, the same way Adam was. But Adam watched that creation. And then they grew together. And were more like brother and sister than husband and wife. And they didn't really see each other that way, and they didn't love each other right. Now, Adam was willing, right? But Lilith wasn't. So Lilith ran away. And God actually sends angels after her into the dark. And she gets some wisdom and knowledge of her own, and is able to elude them for a while. And then they catch her, and she pleads and barters with God. God's a bargainer. He loves bargains and deals, and lawyer. He's a lawyer. He's all about contracts. And he says that her children are gonna suffer, and she says that's fine. I don't care. Anyways, so then he puts Adam to sleep when he made Eve, and he made Eve different. He made her from bone instead of from mud, so she's more solid than Lilith, and has different traits, better traits. So and Adam didn't see her grow and all that stuff because he was sleeping during that. And then he wakes up and he's presented with this beautiful new bride. and and she's shown, and she loves him immediately as well, which is A1. Everything works out. So now when Cain kills his brother and he's thrown from the mountain where they all exist, he goes down and into the dark. They call it, they reference it as being the dark. I'm not 100% sure on that metaphor, what they mean. I think that they're just saying the out of God's sight, because they're up on this mountain protected, and there's like a, it's described as like a thorny hedge, and he's outside of this thorny hedge of thickness, and it's hard to get back through and climb the mountain back up. Impossible. Um, Later on, the other children of Adam go down because they get lured down by like smells and smoke coming up and all these different things that the children of Cain and Lilith are doing, and then they start to breed together and breed with the Nephilim and then and the fallen angels and all this other stuff, and all that goes on. And there's actually like another people spoke of outside of Adam's line in these other writings, and that Lilith has been brooding with. I don't know, but 1,000 of her children need to die every day or something like that. But there's still some left over, uh, so big numbers of Lilith's seed. Now I don't know when they started and how long they grew. And see, God will say something like that and mean he won't be talking in the present. When he says like, you know, 1,000 of your children will be dying every day, it could mean now. Could mean in 500 years, Lilith, when you've got all these children, there's going to be major problems and they're going to be getting wiped. Anyway, since she says she doesn't care, her thing that she learned was shape shifting, uh, and specter ability. There's another word, PH word, I can't think of it. Phantoms, uh, where she can trick your mind to see things that aren't there. Phantoms, um, in order to put you off the road. That's the thing of the phantom, is that it's if it catches you, it doesn't actually mangle you, right? It can, like, let's say a werewolf phantom, or a headless horseman phantom. It chases you to give you a heart attack or to make you run in order to, and then you hurt yourself with the chase. It's not about it hurting you, it's about you reacting and hurting yourself. And it's just a veil. And if you were to stand your ground against it, um, it's harmless in most cases. That's a phantom. Now, a shapeshifter is a whole other thing, but far, 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 far more rare in writings, at least. So like it's not really heard of them being solid so much. Couple legends, as opposed to the phantoms that are heard of everywhere and witnessed by multiple people. Um, and that would be your ghosts as well. People say ghosts and things of this nature. And that's all Lilith's children, but the Nephilim spirits as well that we were talking about that are trapped here. See, they're working for Satan in order to harvest the souls for God. We're thought of as a field of wheat, right? And Jesus describes that in a parable where he says, I scattered the wheat, and some lands on the road, and some lands on the rock, and some lands on the whatever, and he talks about, and then some lands good in the field. And then there's another parable where the guy sows his field, and then somebody comes in and they put a bunch of weed in with the wheat, chaff, and the chaff and the wheat grow the same, and you can't really tell them apart until they flower. And so when the servants ask the landowner if he wants to pull out the chaff now and just leave the wheat, he says no, we'll let it grow, and then we'll get rid of the chaff at the end. We'll burn it, and we'll be able to see the difference easily, and then we'll harvest our wheat. And but you can't tell the difference until they mature. Was the logic there? And then the ones thrown on the road in Jesus's parable, the ones on the road didn't take root, and the ones on the rock took root, but or grew, but fast and whatever, but didn't have any soil to take root in, so then they fell over and died. And it's just metaphors for all the different types of Christians where you hear the word, the seed, and you follow. Some of us hear it and they get really excited about it, but it's for a short time, and then they fall away. And others, will hear it and it's just deaf ears, and others will hear it and grow in the spirit for a while, but then eventually swamp out or whatever by the swamping tide of the Satanists or what the world. But then some will land in the field, take root, and produce 100-fold. So that's also produce 100-fold is where this comes in, where we're supposed to preach a bit and plant seeds of our own, because that's our duty, right? Like that's what he's expecting of us to do. As you take root and you grow, and others are looking at your life and at your changes and at the things that you're doing, you want to be able to make seeds of them to grow more, and raise your children properly if possible, and all that kind of stuff. So moving forward with the biblical stretch in our history, I'm going to try to go faster. I can't, though. I'm slow. So God created himself, and then he created all that other stuff. Then he creates man. And then we had that 1,000 years where Enoch was alive and growing to Noah. See, and Adam and Noah were both alive together on earth for, I think, like 400 years or something like that before Adam died. So really good chance, really, really, really good chance that they knew each other. and that they'd conversed, and that Noah, probably Shem and the other sons, I can't remember the other names, Jelf, I always screw them up, so I'm not even going to try, actually all heard Adam's story and Eve's story firsthand. It wasn't like their Grampy's Grampy told, no, firsthand. They heard it firsthand. Now the sons, I can't say for sure, but let's say 100% Noah did met Adam at some point, and it might have just been maybe he sat in a crowd around Adam and just heard the stories told, Adam and Eve, or met them and actually sat down and had dinner, which is more, I would think. It's, his great grandson who actually was living devoutly, so he probably would have seeked Adam, and they would have hit it off and and enjoyed each other's company. And obviously, if he was devout and a man of God, then he had to know the story of God, so he had seeked that. So anyway, we went all corrupt with all this, with Lilith and all that, and Cain and all these people, and there was death and all that going on, and then the angels came down and they started breeding with all these people as well, making even weirder things, and then they started breeding with animals, making even weirder things, more abominations. And then so then God brought the flood. Well, before the flood, all evidence shows, and the writings say, that the oceans were contained under the land. So if you were to take our mountain ranges, flatten them out, and fill in the oceanic trenches, right? And then lift everything up, all the continents, what we call tectonic plates, and you make that all one plate again, right? Because there's no missing chunks. They're just broken and fallen down. And then there's the big missing chunk in the middle where the oceanic trenches are. But when the oceanic trenches broke open, they pushed the mountain ranges up. So if you flatten the mountain ranges up, push the trenches in, relink all the plates, float them up on top of the ocean, right? And then there was a few spouts, and that's those things, they say that they're asteroid craters with no asteroids in the center of them. Well, all of those were the rivers that flowed in 4 directions. And definitely when the waters were being pushed out in the flood, they would have tripled. They would have been geysers instead of just rivers, because they were just rivers flowing in 4 directions. So that was just the outpour and then there would have been lakes and things around. But there was never rain. There was only just the dew. And then that water of those lakes would have just seeped back into the earth eventually and gotten dranken up and made into the dew, but there was never rain. When Noah said it's going to rain, they were like, fuck is rain? What do you mean rain? It's going to rain. There's going to water fall from the sky? You're insane. That's never happened. We get the dew in the morning, and then it's beautiful every day. So that was Earth before. And then when the flood happened, those oceanic trenches ripped open. The water started geysing out through there, and the plates are on top of the water. So as those plates are sinking down, it's just pushing that water out through the geyser. So it's pushing the plates further apart, making the mountain ranges, and that's why the mountain ranges are equal and parallel to the oceanic trenches. And so they're ripping open, forming the mountains, and all this water shooting up, and until the plates hit bottom, and then that's trapped whatever water that we find down underground now, and we call, we find all that big water reservoir still under there. Well, that's the remnants of it that got trapped in as the rock all settled down. Now, as that water pushed out and it went out into the world, that oceanic trench area and the whole ocean area was bone dry. Not long, but from the time that the rocks hit to the time that the water started to reside again, that area would have been empty of water, and all the water would have been up to fill up right up to the tops of all the mountains, and then the water would have just come back down. That's why we find the fossils of like clams and things on the top of mountains, because that water was all pushed away from the trenches, and then all the pressure stopped and the water stopped coming out, and then everything's going to settle back in, and whatever was shooting up is just going to drop. And buoyancy, you know how that works, right? Or as you guys like to say, gravity. Fucking fake made up word, fake made up math. There's nothing to it. And even when they do the volume test, and then that's buoyancy test. That's not a gravity test. They just call it a gravity test in order to confuse your brain. It sounds smart. The Bible calls it high sounding nonsense. Anyways, everything settles down. That's the water trapped, and now oceans reside. And now all this new, and Noah is floating around out there in the boat, and now the water is going to start to come down again, and he ends up setting on a rock somewhere. But at first, like, let's say he's at an altitude of normal sea level, right? But there was a whole year he was in that boat with all those animals, right? Most of those animals obviously were probably eggs, and the rest were babies just growing, and they were all vegetarians. So there was no fear that way. But and there wouldn't have been a set of horses and a set of zebras and a set of donkeys and a set of, no, there would have been a set of horse type. There wouldn't have been a set of lions and a set of tigers and a set of, no, there would have been a set of cat type, saber-toothed tiger probably, which carried the genetic makeup of all the cats that are on Earth. It just had it all in its one DNA. So its first litter, when it got dropped off and finally got out of the boat and were walking around land, and then they had their first litters, people as well, like, so the cat type, right? Those two cats probably had a pair of, like, they probably had, like, say, a dozen kittens, say. Like, that's not a bad number, not a hard number to see in certain cats. So say they had a dozen, there probably was 2 lions, 2 tigers, 2 hyenas, 2 leopards, 2 cheetahs, or close to it, and then all of those could interbreed and all have different, because they all had a more full DNA strand, so they could all also have a multitude of kittens. And the people, same deal. Like Noah, probably him and his wife, probably they had 3 sons. Probably one looked Asian and one looked more African, and one looked more white or whatever, Caucasian. Traits, You know what I mean? Like, and now as far as the melatonin and the skin color, that's just something that happens over time, depending on how much sun you're in. Your skin is just going to naturally start to produce more and more over time. Um, that that's just something that God programmed into the DNA in order to camouflage us and protect us from the radiation and all that kind of stuff. And that's the other thing that they speculate the that there was another layer of water or ice between us and the sun that would have held in a higher pressure, air pressure, filling your lungs easier, and would have held in more oxygen, but also uh, blocked UV radiation damage from the sun. So, and then obviously with the no oceans and the flat land, you could say that like 70% more trees, 70% more grass, 70% more all that stuff. And there's evidence that they were bigger, right? Like we find tree thing in the past. When we dig into the ground, we find these ancient trees and ancient lizards and things that were huge. Well, lizards grow for their entire lifespan. Some trees can grow for their entire lifespan. If they're living to be, way older because of these different environmental conditions, um, then they're going to be way bigger. Just like the bone right here on the human skull, that eye ridge that grows for your entire life. So if you were like 800 years old, you'd be what we call a caveman, right? It's just misrepresentation of our education. Um, Look at me going on and on. I'm trying to remember what my real point was actually to get to today, but whatever. I know it was way into the future. Oh, I remember. I want to get to the manipulation of science, the manipulation of history, where it all began to that we were fucking fooled to not believe any of this stuff anymore. Uh, that was recent though. Like, people weren't dumb enough to believe